Well, let's get political for a minute here. I've made a lot of videos and I try to avoid politics in general, but about once a month or so I have to put up something relating to the political situation, if not in the world, at least in my own damn country. And this particular election is going to be no different. And a person may say, you know, who the hell are you? Just some guy talking on the computer, making YouTube videos. You don't know shit about politics. Well, you know what? You're probably right. But I would say the same to everyone who claims to know what's going on. This world is full of confusing shit that we have to wade through in order to find out exactly what's going on. So let's just start with the clean slate and say left wing, right wing, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. Let's just say that a majority of both sides just want to do the right thing to help people, while most of the people that seem to consider themselves conservatives really don't share any actual conservative values. They just think they do, because they believe in this tough love type mentality. And this is why people like Donald Trump have won the hearts of, I don't want to say anything too harsh, but the Trump supporters are morons. Maybe not morons in everyday life, and maybe they're very intelligent people, and many of them probably are. But the fact that they are supporting Trump shows that they're not willing to look past the surface. And the argument against this would be always, what's wrong with Hillary and what's wrong with Hillary? As for the Bernie Sanders supporters, all of a sudden he's just a socialist Jew. And nobody wants to really talk about the actual issues. The fact that Bernie Sanders actually is supported only by the people, that he's not funded by big business. But the issue doesn't, for me here, isn't whether Bernie Sanders should be the winner, because I'm not the kind of person who sits and pretends that I know who would be the best president. Perhaps Donald Trump would make many decisions that might help our country. I don't know, because until someone's in office, we can only go by the way that they behave in their everyday life and what they show historically to be their demeanor. Well, considering Bernie Sanders marched with civil rights and with Dr. King, considering he has worked to help veterans and the poor, and to try to tax Wall Street in order to support the people and not just big business, he's just ridiculed. And many of the folks that are supporting Trump, I've had discussions with people who say that, well, they're poor, they don't have any money, it's not about the money, but since Trump's rich, he's going to bail our country out somehow. That they say he's made good decisions with his money and he's rich, therefore, as if that has really any bearing on running a country of the free world. Now that all the things are coming out about him and how his businesses have failed 4 times, how he's hired hundreds of illegal immigrants that he's known have been working, or at least even documented immigrants, I guess it was, but the fact is he goes against everything he says. The point is, even if Donald Trump had a really good plan for the future laid out, I would probably listen to him. But he is consistently diverting from the actual question. The most important thing I think to know about Trump is that he's very, very scared inside. Donald Trump is afraid, and I know that his demeanor on the outside shows that he's an overbearing, arrogant person who's just in love with himself. But the truth is, every person who is narcissistic, if you know the story of Narcissus, fell in love with his own reflection, fell in the water and drowned. This is something we can always reflect on. When a person's laying on their deathbed, what really matters is what they've done with their life and the good things they've done. Not how much money they've made, not how successful their companies were, and mostly not how much makeup you can wear, how well you can tan or defend your hair. This guy has spent so much time threatening to sue people for merely saying something about him. A documentary was going to come out, I think, in 1990, and it was suppressed by Trump, who threatened to sue all the networks if they showed it. So it was shelved, and now it's being shown, of course. But Donald Trump is not a successful businessman. He's a successful liar. For those who aren't aware, there's this thing coming out now about this Trump University that he had. It was a scam. He actually ran a scam where he had some people posing as these real estate moguls that were handpicked supposedly by Trump that would bring in all these people convince the people on the breaks to go increase their credit lines, and then talk them into $35,000 payments for this class, which wasn't even an accredited college or course, didn't even exist. Basically, everybody pulled out, and now they're being sued. Trump was well aware of what was going on. So you think about this on a perspective of American to American. Here's a rich American, a billionaire, who is scamming other Americans out of their money in order to increase his money. Now, this is what corporate America's been doing since the beginning. I think what really bothers me about this is that the people who are supporting Trump say he's tough, and he's going to be tough on people, he's going to be tough on immigration. They believe what this asshole is saying about building a wall between the U.S. and Mexico. And he says, I'm going to have Mexico pay for it. I mean, that was just one of the early things he said, but he never went back to say, okay, it was an error in judgment. Now he's still claiming he'll deport up to, 11 million Americans? And the questions that are asked of him are, well, what are you going to do about their children who are born here, who are American citizens, and you send their parents back? And he just doesn't have a straight answer for anything. You know, his comment about how if we're going to get the terrorists, we need to go after their families and kill their families because that's the only way to get to them. This is something that a man who's running for president of the United States said. He said he wants to kill the families of terrorists. You know, that's like burning somebody's house down because you're angry at them. That's a horrible metaphor. I'm sorry. There is no metaphor for something so horrific as killing someone's family because of their decisions. How many families have we seen that totally disapprove of what what the people are doing? And everybody wants to make Islam the enemy because we're scared. And hey man, in many regards, Islam is partly the enemy, but it's not Islam, it's how it's abused. Just like Christianity, just like the Crusades. Now, we could go on and on about the religious aspect of it, but I won't. It's not about that. It's about, I would like to step aside and say this for a minute. You know, when people talk about Obama, they call him a Zionist, supporter of Israel. He's being completely bashed by the GOP for not supporting Israel enough. And Trump says Israel's our greatest ally and that we should support them fully. Well, we know it's a strategic point in the Middle East. We know why we support Israel. We don't even really need to get into the details of that, but everything that's being said about Obama is a reflection, and many of the things that are said are true. You know, he's screwed up in a lot of ways. In fact, one of the main things that he's not done, and this is what's kind of bothered a lot of people, he's been on shows like Ellen and The View and a bunch of crappy TV shows. But Bill Maher has been asking him to come on the show since the beginning, and he still hasn't come on the show. And I'll tell you, Bill Maher gave Obama $1 million for his campaign. $1 million. That's a lot of money. You know, it doesn't matter if you're rich or not. $1 million given to a campaign means that you support this person, and this person owes you that much. So my belief is that, there's kind of a fake side to all presidents, and even Obama. Obama's got all kinds of issues. But the claims that are being made against him are things that he hasn't done. These are things that the GOP has been doing. They are the ones that support this whole, Israeli domination, of the Middle East. It's like you can think of Israel as like a guard tower at a prison, and the prison is the Middle East. And that guard tower watches over everything. And they will say, oh, look at what the Palestinians did to these Jews. Meanwhile, they're just, shell bombing, throwing bombs over the walls, and doing all kinds of secret, missions to try to, I guess, the Gentiles, right? And then we've got the Muslims talking about the infidels, and everybody wants to fight about religion, and everybody wants Temple Mount. Everybody wants to build their towers. And there's so much that's not understood. A lot of people don't realize why the Middle East is so touchy. It is the Holy Land, of course, but there are reasons. There are specific places where everybody wants to build their temple. And back to Trump, and sorry to divert for so long, but he doesn't understand what's really going on in the world. And every time he talks, he speaks about what what he's done or how great he is. Almost every question he's asked is answered with something like, well, people like me. People think I'm great. People think I'm great. People think I'm wonderful. Everybody I've ever talked to likes me. I know all the politicians. He says things like, me and China are great friends. It's like, are you fucking serious, man? People are listening to this guy and taking him seriously. So I sit back and I bite my tongue, kind of watch what's going on. And I'll tell you, I've watched the Democratic debates and now I've been watching, of course, the GOP debates as well. And it's like pulling teeth to watch that shit. And trust me, I've had teeth pulled. It's important, though. And as an American citizen, if you're going to say something about the political system, you better vote and you better be able to understand what's really going on. And a lot of people are trying to say that voting's a waste of time now. And I've gone back and forth on this issue. And I would say shame on the people who are saying this, because voting is what we've all worked to attain. By telling people not to vote, you're just a fool. Because if you're saying that voting is a way for us to decide who we want, yet to not vote merely because you think that the system's corrupted, it shows a lack of will. And I feel like a lot of people have just given up on a future for this country. People aren't willing to put any more in. They think they're taxed too much already. They say, oh man, we're just living paycheck to paycheck and yada yada, and while a lot of people are, the people who are doing a lot of the complaining are the same guys who have quads they take out on the weekend, or boats, or big ass trucks that they're making payments on, or maybe they got a house too big they couldn't handle. The truth is, the American economy is not as bad as people would like to think. It's just the way people choose to live their lives. And the only problem that we have, besides we have two major issues with the economy and why we have so many problems, it's administration and healthcare costs. And because healthcare is the largest portion of what we pay, and that's a fact. From this country, we pay more into healthcare than military. Yet, cutting socialized healthcare means cutting Medicare, means cutting benefits to anyone who needs it. And a sick country is a country that falls apart. So we know that they're trying to tell us to pay more taxes for more healthcare, or for better healthcare, and some people are saying it's crappier healthcare, but really it's just more coverage for more people. And there's a huge debate on this issue. It is a big problem, and the way that money is being spent on healthcare and administration and pharmaceuticals and big pharma not being regulated is a huge issue. So we have a problem between free market over here and capitalism, and free market and capitalism over here, and socialism over here. And they're intertwined because we have socialized medicine, we have socialized healthcare, we have socialized schools, we have road workers, we have city workers, we have people who lay gravel when it snows, okay? These are things that people don't think about. These people are paid by your tax money, so abolishing taxes completely is ludicrous. But the question here isn't whether we should pay taxes, it's where does most of the money come from? And when Trump is confronted with, what he would do to save money, he said he would close the Board of Education, the national education, and say, oh, we'll just make it local. Oh, that's a really great plan. What about the local governments that can't afford to, to monitor? And what about the ones that don't care? Okay, you're going to leave education up to the local governments. That's great. Then we can have places like Mississippi resegregate schools like they've been attempting to. It's insane. It's totally insane. And he also says, so the two things when he was asked what he would cut costs on, he said education, the Board of Education, and then he said the EPA. We have to eliminate the EPA. Folks, these agencies that people are so vehemently opposed to are agencies that have protected us from many, many travesties. The EPA is not something you want to get rid of. It's something that he may want to get rid of, and it's definitely something that Bush and Cheney and his cronies, which I don't even consider it Bush anymore, it was Cheney and Rove, they were the masterminds behind this. If you want to say it, George Bush Jr. was just a puppet on their strings. I mean, worse than a puppet. And they used that as a context to go to war. We know that they owned Halliburton. Halliburton benefited massively from the war. And people still can't see that the whole thing is a lie. That the whole history of our country is based on a lie. And I hate to say it because It's the country I live in. It's America, right? When people say, well, if you don't like it, get out. Those are the people that I just want to see just disappear away from this country. Because I say, you know, if you don't like what's going on around you, you don't abandon it. You confront it. Because I love my country, I love my neighbors and my people, and a very small portion of the government and those in the lobbying and corporate industry are the ones who ruin it for 99.9% of us. And then the whole rest of the world laughs at us. Canadians, people in the UK, Netherlands, Germany, everybody says, you know, oh, you Americans, you're so silly. And I agree. Allowing this thing, something like this to happen with Trump actually maybe taking the lead tomorrow is a scary proposition. Because it seems like we're willing to hire people to represent our entire country, even though we know they don't have full control, and we know that we don't have a dictatorship. It's not like if he wins, Trump's going to be able to go into office and make all these changes. He's going to have the same problems that Obama had. He'll be blocked. And the problem is that the GOP said they would block every bill Obama tried to put forward. And they have successfully blocked a majority, a whole lot of them, like 300. And ones that would help people like you and me, ones that would help veterans, ones that would help us get better health care, medical. Everything has been blocked, not because of the specific bill, but because they claimed they would do it, and they're doing it. And the GOP is playing this like a childish high school fucking yard fight. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. We're watching the Democratic debate. You know, Bernie and Clinton will go, you know, fire back and forth, and then in the end they say, well, we agree on some points. All right, and they walk away shaking hands. It's respectful. They don't talk over each other. At the GOP debate, it's completely different. The whole way the screen's set up, and it's like a circus. Some of the people are like hooting and hollering, and the audience is like Jerry Springer. So, you know, before a person starts defending it and saying, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, watch these debates. Because no matter what you think about the history of the GOP or Democrats, by watching at least one of each one of the debates, you'll see what I'm talking about. Because I don't feel like people want to inform themselves anymore because they've just given up on the system. And I'm right there with you. I had a point where I was just like, I am done. I'm not doing this anymore. I refuse to be part of this. I'm just going to say, I'm just going to live my life as, you know, in my little corner. And I said, you know, it was after a few years of learning about recent history, you know, not recent, but within the last few thousand years, how Rome, Greece collapsed, how various economies fall apart, Jared Diamond with collapse and guns, germs, and steel, and seeing how countries got to where they are and understanding all these things, I was able to put together a picture of a world that's very complex. And you know that the United States cannot just say, well, we've built our country greater, therefore we're closing our borders now, we're done, you know. Much of our country's been built on the sweat and the back and the blood of others, and we are all in this together. As long as other people are miserable, you will be miserable. You can't just go be happy in your family when everybody else is constantly griping. You have to try to confront the issue of adversity, racism, all the different ethnic needs and wants. And the reason why America is so complicated, and people like to say, oh, America has more laws than any other country, say that's because we're not homogenized. We're not all white. We're not all black. We're not all one religion, and we don't even lean towards any one particular need. Therefore, the laws reflect the needs of the many, and they're always going to imprint themselves on somebody or interfere with somebody's way of life. So what it comes down to is our way of life worthy, and are our needs actually legitimate? Or are we just complaining to complain? A free society is one that costs to maintain. We know this. The pipe dream utopia by many liberals that, oh, well, we just need to hold hands, you know, this is bullshit. I won't associate with liberals. And basically, I frown on anybody who calls themselves a Democrat, just like I do with a Republican. I want people to be independent thinkers. I want people to say, well, I vote for who is the most reasonable. If the Republican candidate was legitimate and they had some good points, I'll tell you something, I respect Jeb Bush. He was the one guy I thought I would like the least out of all the candidates. Until Trump, of course, came along, but the guy is smart, you know, and I almost felt bad for him, the way he was really trying to keep it stable, and you could tell he has a heart. I don't care what people say, everybody's got their opinions on people and politicians, but for me, I watch their demeanor, I look into their eyes, and I read about what they have to say, and that's how I have to base my opinion. And I feel bad for him because he was just torn apart by Trump with his nonsense rambling about this and that. And, you know, for me, I'm watching all the candidates closely, and I want to vote for the right person, not for, you know, what my heart tells me and say, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm not, go Bernie, I love Field the Burn. I'm totally with him and backing him and supporting Bernie Sanders because he's for the people. And I'll tell you, you know, when asked about his religion, a lot of people, he's from a Jewish family, but he says, you know, when talking about religion, his answer was that I think all the people are one, that we should all be taking care of each other. You know, his religion is the people. And you can see it in his eyes, you can see it in the way he acts. And a lot of people, it's like too good to be true. It's like seeing a pot of gold on the side of the road and saying, well, I know if I try to get to it, I'll just never get there, or trying to chase a rainbow, you know. Like, and people are treating Bernie Sanders like a pipe dream, as if this could never happen, you know. Well, I'll tell you, he's risen pretty quick, and he's dominated over Clinton in many regards, and at a point, some, you know, people were saying he might be, you know, even ahead of Trump. Regardless of what the polls are saying this early, it doesn't matter. We need to stick with it, and we need to do the best we can to make the decision of who we think the best candidate would be. So you want to talk about Bernie Sanders? Yeah, he wants to raise taxes to a degree, but what does that mean? Is it really that much more? Well, I don't know. I've been looking at the numbers, and it appears that if he's really starts attacking Wall Street and taxing speculative trading, like he says, and he starts taxing corporations that are storing their money offshores, like he says, much of this money can come back into the economy. Many of the things that, like when I was saying earlier, when confronted with how Trump would save money, he says, you know, he says he's going to cut the EPA and the Board of Education. And when confronted with the statistics that, well, Mr. Trump, the education department is only receives something like $30 billion, and only about $80 billion, I think, goes to the EPA. That's $120 billion out of $10 trillion. He's like, how are you going to make up for the rest? You know, it's less than what? Less than a couple percent of the total. He's giving answers that don't make sense and answers that don't really resonate or reflect the actual problem. But meanwhile, on the Republican or the Democratic side, they're having the opposite problem. They're trying to say, well, people should just be happy and pay the taxes because it's going to help everyone. You cannot force in a free market people to pay for something unless you can give them a good reason to want it. So what's the incentive for people paying more in taxes? For healthcare, for people who may need it, but if the person who is paying the taxes already has healthcare, why should they care? Well, all I could say for that is you should care about your neighbors. You should care about others. You should care about the people. And if you use the excuse that, well, people will just abuse the system and sit at home and suck off welfare, I say, you know, you just have to really look at people. Some people want to do that. Some people really do want to abuse the system. But we try to make it as hard as we can to do that. You know, anybody who's collected unemployment knows that there's certain rules. Anybody who's collected welfare knows there's certain rules and brackets you have to be in. You can't collect welfare when you're making a certain amount of money, but, you know, it's kind of like we have to basically just trust that people really want to make a difference in their life and give them a reason to want to change. And that is hope. Hope is the only reason that people will want to change. Hope that there's something greater, that people are looking out for them, that their leaders give a shit, that their doctor's going to spend more than 5 minutes with them. And for me, one of the most frustrating things in life is dealing with stupid people. And I hate saying it. Now, I've been wanting to make this video for a while, but I've been thinking, you know, how do I say that without sounding like a dick? You know, years ago I wouldn't care. I'd say, fuck you stupid people, you're idiots, eat shit. But today, I'm trying to learn to be more tolerant and say, hey, everyone has their own opinion. However, if your opinion sucks, and I feel that there's legitimate reason to believe it sucks, and I believe it may be harmful to my well-being, like I do with Trump supporters, then I'm going to speak out on it. And so all I can do is just put out my words here and say why I think that Trump is not a good candidate. Because propaganda and playing on the hearts and emotions of people rather than using actual statistics and numbers, it's really a letdown to know that people are still falling for this in today's day and age. Propaganda is not something of the past. It's something that people still fall for. And I talk in small circles of people and have discussions with folks that are really, seem to understand what's going on, and then I go out in the real world or go into a different forum or something and talk to somebody who's just a complete buffoon. And their explanations are horrible. And instantly, like most of these Trumpies, they'll go right to an ad hominem attack about why I'm dumb or what my problem is, or they won't respond to a comment for an hour, then they'll come back and tell me how, oh, take more mushrooms or smoke more pot, you stoner. It's such an obvious type of person who supports a guy like Trump that it's no wonder that he's got the bullies on his side. The bullies in this world never prosper. It's something that once you leave high school you realize. The bullies are always the ones that seem to be down in the dumps later on. And I'm telling you, from my perspective and my opinion, all that Trump wants is attention. He's not that interested in this country. His whole celebrity apprentice thing, the things that he said on and off camera, his Trump game and how he talks so big about himself. If he was just a rich man who had done all these things, but he was very humble and said, I attribute all this to my father who helped me get this started, and, being a humble person goes a long way, and he has not an ounce of humility. He just threatens to sue people. And so I hope people can see through this, see that Trump is not tough. He's a coward. He's lonely and he's scared inside, and he's going to die one day, like all of us are, and he wants his name to be remembered as a president. I don't believe that he really has any interest in helping this country. I think that he just wants to be seen and talked about and recognized. And that, my friends, is a scary-ass proposition. So those are my opinions for what they're worth. I'm going to vote for Bernie Sanders as of the current situation. If I am forced to, I suppose I would vote for Clinton, because while she has problems and she is supported by Goldman Sachs and Wall Street, all the presidents in history have been supported by somebody. My hope is that she will just be able to, pull her head out of her ass and actually make some changes. So, but man, I hope Bernie wins. And I'm telling you, no, I don't think Bernie can fix the economy. No, I don't think Trump can destroy the economy or fix the economy. Neither one of them can. They're figureheads. But a figurehead represents a group, and that group wants to be respected. So if America wants to be respected, we have to put somebody in office that respects other people, including other races, other cultures, who understands how the world really works. And Mr. Trump is not that person. And I believe Bernie Sanders may be. So, there it is, peeps. Have a great day, and talk to you all.